Hey, everybody, welcome back to the FlipNerd Show. Really excited to be here. We have not created nearly as many FlipNerd shows as we have in the past. We've done over 1,500 podcasts over the last 8 years, but I've been putting a lot of focus into Investor Fuel Show and things like that. So excited to start getting things back on track here and really excited to be here with my buddy, Danny Johnson. We're going to get started today. We're going to talk about the importance of follow-up. Danny's really a master at systematizing your business, and he's going to talk about the importance of follow-up. Welcome to Real Estate Investing Secrets. We're all looking for freedom and the opportunity to live better, more fulfilling lives. But most of us were trained our entire lives to work for someone else and chase their dreams. How can we use real estate investing as a vehicle to achieve financial freedom? My life is dedicated to answering your real estate investing questions and helping you build an investing business that allows you to change your life and the world around you, and to enable you to turn your dreams of financial freedom into a reality. My name is Mike Hambright from FlipNerd.com, and your questions get answered here on the Real Estate Investing Secrets Show. Hey, Danny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. So glad to be here.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy. We were just talking a little bit, catching up because it's been a little while. I don't know this for sure. I bet you've been on the show. Do you know? I don't know if you know this. I'm coming up on 8 years of from when I started the FlipNerd Show.
I didn't know that.
And you've been doing your podcast for a long time too, but I think you've probably been on this might be the third time, maybe?
I think so. Yeah. And I remember the first time because I got the glasses. I got the black framed glasses. I don't think you sent them out the second time. I was disappointed that I didn't get them.
Yeah, it's kind of like Verizon. If you're an existing customer, you don't get the creative discounts as the first time as you're a new customer. But you're somebody I've always looked up to. You've really done some amazing things in the industry. And I think as somebody that runs a service business for real estate investors, which we have for our advertising agency Investor Machine, I always appreciate technology. I guess I'm a little bit of a nerd, which is kind of why we call this FlipNerd. And so I appreciate people that have made a lot of effort, because I know that it's on many levels, it's a thankless business to try to impact the industry. And so I appreciate all you've done there.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
That's why I did it for you.
Yeah. Well, hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I started back in 2003, and I came out of college, was a software developer. So that's how that started. And my father started flipping houses at that point, right after I graduated from college. And he was having so much fun with it. And something in me was just like screaming to do the same thing. Like, he was always an entrepreneur growing up. All of the businesses pretty much failed while I was growing up. But after I moved out, then he found this and had so much success in it. And he was just having so much fun. And I just felt that burning desire to do the same thing. And of course, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that just, added fuel to the fire, and, got into it and started doing it part-time. I was too scared to leave the job. So it took me 3 years to go full-time, and I had to be fired from my software job. And it was interesting because it was, with the job there, it was the real estate investing, the house flipping could be more of the fun thing, right? I wasn't relying on it, wasn't stressing me out because I already had everything taken care of through my paycheck. And it's interesting though, because the last probably year of being part-time, I was losing money by not just focusing on real estate. Right. So I needed that push. So I got fired and went full time, and did that with my ex-wife and I. We did everything ourselves in that business for the first 8 or 9 years, which is pretty crazy. And then, we started building a team at that point after that much time, and got to the point where, we had the freedom that we were always wanting when we got into the business.
Yeah.
We got that ability to focus on other things and other passions while we still had it going, while we still had the business going, and we're a big part of the house flipping business. And, that's when I transitioned back into doing a lot of software, whenever I started Lead Propeller, and then RAM Mobile, which became Flip Pilot, which became Flip Pilot 2, which became Forefront. So yeah, it's been a cool ride.
Yeah. It's interesting. Whenever I talk to people, because I remember when I was like the new guy, I'm like the youngest guy in the room. Now I feel like I'm like Yoda. I'm like the guy with that people think have wisdom. I don't know whether I do or not, but definitely have a lot of war wounds and a lot of experiences, right? And so I think it's interesting to talk to people that have been in the business for a long time, because you evolve and you go back to things that you like to do but you didn't have time for, and now you have the resources to do it, or you start to kind of find yourself, right, and say, I have the financial freedom that I want, and at some level it starts to not be just about the money anymore, depending on how you started. But and you start to see people start to shift more towards what they want to do instead of what they have to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because in the, I had that burning desire for the real estate for house flipping for years and years. It just, I couldn't talk or think about anything else. Like
Right.
that was everything. And it annoyed some people, a lot of people actually, but it was just a thing that I never had to consider whether I liked it or not. It was just like, boom, I'm doing it. I love it. Like I love hunting down motivated sellers, like who's somebody in some sort of situation that might have some real estate they'd like to sell. What are these situations and how can I get in touch with them that no one else is doing? All that kind of stuff was just a game, and it was so much fun. And, that does transition, right? Because for me, at least it did, where after I had a certain amount of success, it became this thing where, I'm still keeping it going and I'm juggling all this stuff, but I've lost a lot of the passion for it.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Yeah.
Like, why is that passion gone from certain pieces of the business?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that feel this way, and I do too. It's like it just gets the transactional nature of just like every time, every deal you do, you're starting over. It kind of wears on some people for sure, and I know people that have done it for way longer than me, and they still keep doing it. So I think everybody's a little bit different, but at the end of the day, I think of the business this way: is like if it's a stepping stone or a stair step to get you somewhere else. I mean, I do a lot more multifamily now, I mean, like, we're talking, we've got several deals under contract, a couple that are $24 million deals, $15 million, just bigger deals. But I didn't do that for the first 13 years I was in the business. And even when I did do it, I started to partner with people that are experts in that space, because, I know the learning curve is steep to be able to learn how to do all that on your own. And multifamily is kind of perfect for team-based investing. But I just think, I think on some level, there's a lot of newbie folks out there these days that take a lot of pride in the hustle and the grind and all that. And I think I'm past that, and it sounds like you are too. It's a great business. It got me where I am. I love it. Everything that's done for me, it absolutely changed my life. I'll always be involved in single family investing for sure. But I've gotten to a point to where I have, resources to do other things that I'm more passionate about.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to come across as being like a bummer thing of like,
Yeah,
well, this guy's
no,
not excited about real estate, I'm not going to listen to this. It's more of like following what's going on with you and your passions about it, right? Because there's, ends up being something where I think Jim Rohn used to say it all the time, where someone come in and say they have 8 years experience or 10 years experience in something. And he'd look at the resume and he'd say, no, you got 1 year of experience repeated 10 times.
Yeah.
Right. You did that thing, you learned it, you did it, and then you just kept doing, you didn't do anything different. You didn't evolve.
Yeah.
And, start providing more value by doing other things. And so I think that's the thing to be aware of, because I feel like that's maybe what happened. I think I see that in a lot of other people too. But some people, they just love doing all the pieces all the time. That's just where their groove is, and they're good with that.
Yeah.
But if it's not, like being honest about like, hey, I'm kind of getting tired of this kind of stuff. And I say that because I wish that we had transitioned into having a team much earlier than 8 or 9 years into this.
Yeah. So, but the truth is, Danny, you have evolved, and so have I. I mean, you evolved into software, which helps a lot of other people. After my first few years, maybe 2-3 years into it, after I'd flipped like 100 houses, I felt like something was missing. And for me, it was like the social aspect of it, because I don't know if you remember my story, but I left corporate America and always worked around. I always worked for huge companies with thousands or tens of thousands of employees. And it's always somebody's birthday, and there's always like happy hour. There's a lot of social stuff. Then I went to like my wife and I in a hole in the wall, like strip center office that was like super cheap for years. And we're like, we just weren't around like our peers or around people like us. And so for me, that's when I started coaching and sharing what I'm doing, and yes, I made money doing coaching and all that stuff, but I really got a lot of joy out of just like sharing my knowledge or helping other people. And so that is the evolution. I don't think the evolution has to be that you go from $100,000 houses to $500,000 houses to mansions to multifamily. It doesn't have to be
Oh,
like
yeah.
size of the deal necessarily, but it's more of the evolution is in terms of the impact you make. I think like you help individual people and you help people that help people. And, you know, you can think of it a lot of different ways. So.
Yeah. And I think that's my point, is just kind of being open to, possibility of changing within it. Right. Because
Yeah.
I think if I were to sum up where I was going with that, was just this feeling of trying to make it to the point past, I think it was something like 20 or 30 deals, like moving beyond that. And it was a true grind, because it was, okay, we've done this many deals, we need to do, 50% more this next year. And the only focus that I had was go back and like, what other marketing campaigns, or how much can I put more money into, how can I put more money into these other campaigns to generate more leads?
Yeah.
Right. And it was like this never ending thing that required all kinds of work, and putting those campaigns together, executing them, handling even more calls, going to even more appointments, managing even more rehab crews. And it was like this unsustainable, thing that was going on to try to have more success. And it just was
Right.
not working out.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it's a old guy therapy session we're having here, Danny. But
Well, no.
and I'll tell all the listeners here, we're going to get to a follow up here in just a moment. But you know what I think it is and I'll kind of summarize and we can move on, because I know you're friends with Matt Andrews too. Matt and I are really good friends. And in fact, you just saw him like the week before last. He came and did a keynote at Investor Fuel. And he said this quote a few years ago. And I've used it over and over again. In fact, he used it again a couple of weeks ago. And that was for him, because Matt's very much a lifestyle guy. He's like done a lot of great things. But, he said for him, the quote he gave is, real estate isn't the thing, it's the thing that gets you the thing. And I think that a lot of people that start in real estate investing are in love with real estate investing, but what they're really in love with what it's doing for them, the freedom that it's giving them. And then you get to a point to where, if you're successful, you have the freedom that you sought, but that real estate isn't enough anymore. Like it got you there, but it's not as exciting as it once was. And it's you have to find some other passion that moves you forward. And for everybody, that's a little different, right? It could be doing charitable things with the resources that you've earned. And with some people, it could be building software, it could be coaching, it could be masterminds, it could be a lot of things, right? And so anyway, hopefully for people listening, the lesson there is that wherever you're at in your business, if you're feeling a little burned out on the transactional side, know that that's okay. You just have to find what that passion is. If you're new, just know that kind of like a new relationship, eventually some of the new relationship stuff will wear off. And you got to find that passion somewhere else, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of that came up, I mean, with, growing that, because it was still looking at what we were doing, right? That was causing the burnout. And it was that whole idea of, being on that hamster wheel of, I've got to do more. I got to go faster,
Yeah.
faster, without changing the way we were going about it. And that's more of what I was moving towards, instead of saying like, oh, this business is too much work. You guys, anybody considering this should go do something else.
No.
There's a lot more money in Bitcoin. But no, it's a lot easier. You just sit there and you buy it. But no, I'm just kidding. I don't have any Bitcoin. I wish I had some. But it was more of, going to looking at like how we were operating that, right? Because we were operating just her and I. And that, like, what was the reason for, I had to look at what was the reason for staying that way when we knew other people that had teams that were doing things and we just weren't doing that. And I think that there was this idea of, this business is fun. Again, this business is fun as long as I keep it sort of this thing that's not too organized. I didn't go to business school, and I don't have to have a business plan. I don't have to have any of this stuff. But as soon as I bring on some employees or somebody to help, I've now got extra responsibility that I don't want.
Right.
Right. I won't be able to go on vacation for 2 months and shut everything down and just enjoy myself.
Right.
Which, funny enough, couldn't happen because we had to take calls and go to appointments and
Right.
all that stuff.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's a leap of faith to build a team. And I think a lot of us, especially when you first got started, you have to be lean and mean, and then you get to this point to where for some people it's hard to um, bear that expense, even though in hindsight I know that I couldn't be nearly as out of my businesses as I am without having a team. One of our businesses, I told you, we have 75 employees. So we've got a huge team, and that's actually giving me my life back. Right. But I think same thing for us, we had a couple of employees from the beginning. We had a admin up front. We had an acquisitions guy pretty early on, but I still did full-time acquisitions almost. And we had me and another person, or sometimes two other people and me, but I was still heavily involved in the house flipping side for the first 10 years. And some of it is just a control issue of like, I can do it better or faster, or I'm more reliable, or employees are difficult. But all those challenges, but you could look back now and say what you do differently and share those lessons with other people. Right. And hope that hopefully because back when I started, there weren't podcasts, there wasn't a lot of information online. I mean, there were physical boot camps and workshops and stuff like that, but most of them were for new people, not experienced investors, and so that's one of the beauties of a mastermind is people can get together and talk through this stuff, right, and try to figure it out and help other people improve. But ultimately, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the importance of follow-up. And I know, in fact, back to growth, people that are trying to grow now, sometimes people don't have the resources yet, or they don't want to spend the resources on more and more advertising because advertising costs are up more than ever. But you can squeeze more juice out of the fruit you already have, right? And you do that through a systematic approach to following up, and not necessarily generating more leads, which there's nothing wrong with, but trying to convert more of the leads you already have, right?
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's exactly what happened, right? Because when I was on that hamster wheel, we got, to grow, I've got to do more leads. I got to generate more leads. I got to find that magical marketing campaign, the new one that people are talking about. They're generating all the deals, and I got to do that. I got to try that too. And, the real problem there was inefficiency in the business.
Yeah.
I thought it was the leads. I thought, oh, I'm not getting enough good leads. That's the only problem I could possibly have.
Right.
And that's where the epiphany was, because it actually occurred, several years ago, but I had written a book called Flipping Houses Exposed, where I documented 34 weeks in the life of a real estate investor. And in that book, I wrote about every single lead that came in, like all the marketing I did. And then like every time somebody called me, I said, here's what they're asking, here's what they owe, here's why they want to sell, here's what I offered or whatever. 495 of those, 495 leads in those 34 weeks were documented. And, a lot of people tell me I got into this business because of that book, because it showed me it was a numbers game. You just kept saying next, next, next.
Yeah.
So I felt pretty good about it. Right. I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is cool. I'm getting a pat on the back, And then, after getting burned out and after sitting and just really considering, everything, realizing that I only bought, I think 11, and maybe after a little while later, I got a couple more, maybe 11 or 13 deals out of those 495 leads. That sucks. I mean, that really does. That stinks. Especially being that a lot of those were from website, right? Which are people typically looking for you instead of you just mass, shooting out a bunch of external mail and hoping it finds somebody that might need your service. Whereas online, typically they already know they have a problem. They're looking for you to help them out. And so that conversion rate, which I think is like 2.2%. So it's like 1 out of every 45 leads or something like that.
Yeah.
And the problem was not in putting more leads. If I put more leads in at that conversion rate, I've got to do 10 times the normal, roughly the normal, right? Because numbers vary based on all kinds of factors.
Sure. Yeah.
But 10 times, I would need to do 10 times as many leads if I kept my funnel the way it was, right? And funnel being not like marketing funnel, but the entire business funnel. Like a lead came into my business, somebody called me. Did I answer the phone live? Did I set an appointment right away? Like as soon as possible as well? Did I, take as much time as I could to be at that appointment and not rush off to something else and ask, not build any rapport or trust? And then did I follow up? So all of those things, and there's some other things too, but all of those things made a big difference. And especially when I hired people, because then it was somebody could answer the phone live anytime, right? That's their job. They were doing that.
Right.
And then acquisitions people that would go to an appointment, they'd be able to sit in front of the house before the appointment, reset from the last one, no matter what happened or whether they got rejected or whatever, reset, and even imagine getting the deal on this next one, doing some law of attraction stuff or whatever, the acquisition person was into, and go in and get the sale, and be able to take the time because the appointments could be spread apart. But I think the biggest change in the number of deals and that conversion rate, because we ended up getting to a point of about 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 7, somewhere in there it fluctuated, became a deal, which is like 10 times better, I think, than what it used to be.
Way better, yeah.
And so with that, the biggest thing that made the difference was follow-up, getting consistent with the follow-up.
Yeah.
Before, the more leads I generated, the less follow-up I could do because there was nobody to do it. It was me, and I was too busy taking calls and going to appointments. So I was just killing myself for nothing for the most part, when I could have just been, making sure that none of those leads ever slipped through the cracks.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting, the types of sellers that we buy from, they've often been delaying this decision for years, if not decades, right? And so to think that they're ready to go right now is typically pretty rare. I mean, there's definitely some sales techniques, some stuff like, my buddy John Martinez teaches about how to really set the expectation of why you're there. But for the most part, people have been delaying that decision or finding a reason to not make a decision today for a long, long time. And so that's why follow-up is key. It's really a process, right?
Yeah. And so it made me curious about, why are people not following up? Well, I mean, nowadays, like, why are the most real estate investors know that fortune is in the follow-up, and then yet they're still not doing it or doing it consistently? And like the biggest things that I hear are just not enough time, right? Because if you're doing what I was doing, of course there's not enough time. You gotta take the chance and stop doing maybe some of the marketing so you could spend more time doing follow-up.
Yeah. And
then from there, it's having the right perception of how you're seeing what follow-up is all about. And that's an interesting thing to say, right? It's not very clear what I mean by that, so I'll get clear on it. Now, with Forefront, which is our software, and obviously we do automated follow-up and stuff like that, we have these calls every 2 weeks, and we're on one of these calls with customers, and everybody just asks questions and things. And I asked everybody on the call, who here is not using the automated follow-up? And about half of the people that are paying for the software are not doing automated follow-up, and half are. The half that were immediately jumped on the ones that weren't. We're like, what are you guys doing? You're missing out on deals. We're making, like, we're getting all these deals with 50% more and all this kind of stuff, and just getting onto them. But it was good because we got to sit there and say, okay, those of you that are not, why are you not doing it? When it produces, like, it creates a consistency. And this gets into even when even if it's not automated, right? Why are they not manually following up? Even if you don't have a software system, why would you not be manually following up? And I think time has something to do with it. But on the other side of it, what I saw from why they're not doing it, they said, we're afraid that it's too salesy or pushy. And so the perception is that they're nagging people every time they contact. They told us they weren't interested. So if I follow up, more than once or something, they're going to think that I'm just being annoying, and I'm trying to convince them, hey, sell me your house, sell me your house. When that's not at all what follow-up is, right? You're not going to convince somebody by, sell me your house, sell me your house, sell me your house, sell me your house 7 times, magic number, and they sell you the house. It's all about just being top of mind. Just reminding them, hey, we're still here. We're still interested in the house. Have you done anything with it? Hey, have you sold that house? Great if you did, but if not, let me know. And, we need to buy a house this month. Obviously these are spaced out, right, over time, depending on how motivated they are.
Yep.
But it's all about just being there so that they remember when time has the way of motivating them, something happens in their life where they're like, okay, I have to sell now. Guess who they're going to think of? Like the one person that kept contacting them.
Yeah, for sure. I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday, somebody that's actually in my mastermind, and they have a ton of leads, and their follow-up is, they've only been calling, just like they call like every 30 days, and they're pretty much saying some version of just checking to see if you sold your house yet, or are you still interested in selling. And we talked a little bit about some scripts and things you can change, but I was like, look, it could just be like, hey, I just happened to be in your neighborhood. I was looking at another house, just wanted to check, thought of you, just wanted to check in. You don't even have to say, do you want to sell the house? Do you want to sell the house? Do you want to sell the house? It could be thinking of you, especially if you use a CRM and you're really good. There's some level of automation too, right? Every touch point doesn't need to be a call, right? It could be a text. It could be, I don't know if your CRM does this, but, and there's a little, gray area, but some systems do RVMs, and it could be, certainly emails. It could be a number of different ways to touch people because people communicate differently, right? I think that takes a lot of pressure off of people of having to like, I don't want to pick up the phone and call this person again. It's like, you don't think about it. Like have an automated text message go out on day 47, and you don't have to think about it. But I think, like you said, it doesn't have to be always about, do you want to sell the house? Do you want to sell the house? Do you want to sell the house? It's just like, hey, we just bought a house in your neighborhood. We were over by this way. Or if you wanted to send something manually, it could be, if you do a good job in your CRM of tracking, like this person was an avid deer hunter. It's like, hey, deer season's coming up. You getting ready for that? Just thought of you or whatever, right? It's just like showing people that you care and you listen to them when you were with them so they can trust you, right?
Yeah, and that's huge, and that stands out. People. Yeah. I go to a lot of different coffee shops because I hate working in one place for too long. So I like to go to different atmosphere and everything. And the ones I found that I love, sometimes I'm like, oh, I love this place so great. And why is that? It's not necessarily the core or anything like the temperature there or anything like that. I realized it was because of like at some of them, the baristas make it a point because you use your credit card, they see your name, they use your name. They never ask me for my name, but I walk in, hey, Danny, it's like they are just super friendly. Like they personalized it and, treated me as an individual. And so I just end up liking, and that's the whole name of this whole game is building this rapport and this trust with somebody. And that's how you do it. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, for folks that are kind of struggling with consistently doing that. There's really, like you said, there's probably a couple reasons. One is it's in your own head that you're too frequent or you're bothering somebody. And then the other one is not using the right tools. Like there's, to this day, you said some of your customers are not using the very tools they're paying for. There's some people that won't pay for tools because they know they're not going to use them or they're too expensive or whatever. But obviously the cost of not getting a deal is way higher than the cost of using tools to help you get those deals. But maybe we could just take a couple minutes and talk about getting it out of your head, which we just kind of talked about, but also just using the right tools that will help you accomplish this way easier.
Yeah, you got to have because this is like the start and stop that I'm sure most entrepreneurs go through. It's like they have a great idea, want to implement it, they start doing it, and then they have another great idea, and then they stop doing the other thing. So that's the whole point of the automated part of it. Even if you want to do it manually, have something that tells you when to do it if you're going to do it manually, but otherwise automate. And, that's why we even changed the name of FlipPilot to Forefront was to have the active leads at the forefront. The stuff we're actively working, I want in my pipeline showing me where it's at. The rest of it, all this other stuff that's in follow-up, I don't want it making me feel overwhelmed. I want to look at the small amount that we're actually actively right now talking to, negotiating with, working with. Follow-up goes in the background, right? As soon as they respond to one of the automated messages, text or email, or I get a task to call them or somebody on my team to call them, or manually text them or do something like that by looking at notes, like you said, and putting in whatever they want that's personalized. If they respond to any of those, it'll kick it back up into the pipeline to be worked as an active lead again, right? And pause the follow-up, right? Which is really cool because you can take all of that out and then have all that bandwidth back to really go, and it makes it consistent because you can chain sequences. And so what I like to do is create like a motivated, a little bit more frequently sequence, and then gets to like a medium like sequence, like there was spread out like maybe once every 3 weeks to get a message, and then like a longer term, maybe every 2 months, right? Something like that. And then once the first one ends, it kicks them into the second one, right? Because they never respond. It kicks them into the next one after that. I don't like I don't know if you've done a lot of follow-up, or you were real good with follow-up, but what's the longest you ever followed up with somebody to get a deal?
So we had one that was almost 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And the benefit of this is, we have, when we call, because what typically happens is you call and you don't get through, you get a voicemail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, or even the number's disconnected, right? So over the years, we just evolved, like, oh, number's disconnected, I stop following. It's like, no, keep calling, because they probably just didn't pay their bill this month, and
Mm-hmm.
next month it'll be back on. And so we got to the point to where, we just had our team that's following up say, even if you called and left a message, just say called, left voicemail. And so in that particular one, because I've actually talked about this in some coaching stuff I've done before about the importance of follow-up. Of, you and I both had these conversations a number of times with other people around us, right? Is that you could see called, left voicemail. We can see all these notes, called and they said, oh, it was a rental property, but they're like, oh, we're thinking about moving back in it. We think we're going to sell it. We're going to fix it up ourselves. Like all these things over the years. And then eventually, and a whole bunch of, when we said who we were, they hung up on me, but they didn't say stop calling. So we just kept the follow-up going. And then eventually they said, is that offer still good?
Yep.
And so that doesn't happen with every lead. That doesn't even happen with, it's a very small percentage, but what is that small percentage value if you do it right? That's worth, for a lot of, professional investors, that's worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do it right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I did. My longest was 8 years. I think about 8 years. And it's because I like the house too. I wasn't doing this with all the leads, but it was 8 years on this one because it was an old historic house. And I liked the old man that was the owner. And he was always waiting for his daughter. His daughter didn't want him to sell it. And then so it was always like, hey, has your daughter changed her mind yet? Ready to sell that house? Because I know it's still falling down. I would drive by it all the time. And he finally called me one day and said, hey, yeah, she said she's okay with me selling it. So I want to sell it to you. And yeah, that was pretty cool. And I wholesaled that house for 40 or 50,000. And then the guy that bought it from me, I kicked myself because, yeah, that's awesome for a wholesale deal, right? But then when they fixed it up and they turned around and sold it, I think they made like 250 or 300K.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I undervalued what the potential of that place was, but still, I'm not going to complain too much about 40 or 50 grand.
Yeah.
On a wholesale where I didn't have to do any fix up or clean up or anything.
So I think the lesson here is get the right tools to make it easy for you. And then don't assume that you're bugging people. As long as you really are following up and paying attention and listening to them. I mean, just like that one you just mentioned, for most people that are in a difficult situation, they don't have a lot of money, there's some financial distress there, or they don't have the means or even interest in fixing up a house, their situation generally is not going to get better, whether it's months or years. Like it's just going to continue down a path of deterioration probably, and more financial distress. And so staying on top of people with their best interest in mind, right? Just following up, checking in, always trying to serve people first, because they're going to have to sell it eventually. So why not have it be to you?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the way to go. And really, like the big thing is that whole personalization of it. And if you do it manually, right, that's easy to do. You can do that. And if you automate it, make sure you get a system where you can do like short codes and stuff to automatically put in their name or your company name or the house address, because those, like when it's automated, but it seems automated, it does the opposite, right?
Right.
Of what you're really trying to do. So make sure that you can personalize it. But yeah, that's
awesome. Well, Danny, folks, you've got a podcast you've been doing. How long have you been doing your podcast for?
Oh man, I don't even know. I sell it short. I'll say 4 years, but it's 6 or something.
Yeah.
I think it's probably 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a while. So how do folks find out about your podcast, about your CRM? Like drop some links for us. Tell us where they can get a hold of you.
All right. So flippingjunkie.com is the podcast. Been around for a long time. Start with episode like 16 if you're looking for training to get started in this business, because I started doing a sequence of starting with mindset, motivation to marketing, a whole order of things instead of jumping around episode to episode for like 40 or 50 episodes.
Okay.
So that was cool. And then if you're, operating this business yourself or with one partner and you guys are wearing all the hats, you're tired of it, like I was talking about earlier, I did start actually a new podcast called Braver. And that one's got about 9 episodes at this point, I think. But it's really talking about like what are the reasons that we, self-sabotage or, we're afraid to grow and build a team and treat it as more of a business. And so that's what that one's all about. It's called Braver, Braver. You can go to braver.fm for that. And then the software is Forefront. It's a different way to do CRM. It's a visual approach. Everything sort of at a glance. And this is basically why we completely scrapped the last version after paying like $1 million to build the whole thing. We just, like, the usability, I thought sucked. And so this one, like, you can never get lost. You never go 1 or 2 clicks deep. You never, like, that's the frustration with Podio, right? Is like all these different apps and all that stuff, and you're having to click around to get all the info.
Yep.
So we spent a lot of time, even amongst ourselves and our team, arguing about design and how it should work. Like, that's just the most important part of it. So if you want to check that out, you can go to Forefront CRM. That's FOREFRONT CRM.com. And then if you've got old leads that you didn't do a bunch of follow-up with, why not do that now? And so I've got a sequence that I can provide. That's when to send them out, the emails and the text messages that you should use. You can get that free if you go to forefrontcrm.com/reactivate, RE and then activate.
Cool.
And you can get that sequence.
We'll have those links down in the show notes here. So Danny, great to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Great to see you too.
And everybody, you're going to see some amazing things come out of FlipNerd. We've been doing the podcast, like I said, for almost 8 years. The last year, I've kind of focused on the Investor Fuel podcast, which, if you haven't listened to that, we interview members of the Investor Fuel mastermind, and those are just amazing. And we're about to do some pretty cool things with the FlipNerd podcast, kind of an evolution, and where you're going to start to see some other hosts and friends of mine, people that are my mastermind, people that I really respect in this industry, are going to start to be some hosts of some different shows on the FlipNerd platform. So appreciate you guys a ton. If you go to flipnerd.com, you can learn more. You can learn more about our mastermind at investorfuel.com, and our Legion businesses, theinvestormachine.com. Very cutting edge kind of technique to how we use data there. So appreciate you guys a bunch. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to today's show. There are 3 ways I can help you start or grow your real estate investing business. If you're a new investor and just getting started, the FlipNerd Investor Coaching Program is the most effective program in America. I've been coaching and mentoring new real estate investors for 10 years, and my students have literally purchased thousands and thousands of properties. Many of them started with little to no experience at all. Our program is a paint-by-numbers program where we tell you exactly what to do week by week to make sure that you don't get distracted on your way to results. We show you how to build a real business, not just create another job for yourself. New memberships are limited. You can learn more and apply or schedule a call with me and my team at flipnerd.com/coaching. If you're an experienced investor doing a minimum of 10 deals a year, up to 500 deals a year or more, or have a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio already, you should check out our powerful Investor Fuel Real Estate Investor Mastermind. Over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors are members, and it's not uncommon for our members to 2 to 5x their business just from getting around other members at Investor Fuel. At Investor Fuel, each of us are business advisors to one another's businesses, but we don't stop at business. We focus heavily on becoming better people and living fuller lives. If you're looking for fuel for your business or fuel for your life, please check out investorfuel.com. Applications and interviews are required, as most investors are not a fit for our community. Please learn more at investorfuel.com. If you're not ready for coaching or masterminds but eager to start learning more about investing, please join our private Facebook group by visiting flipnerd.com/Facebook. New members get access to free training from us right here at flipnerd.com, and it's a community to safely ask your questions. A great place to get started. Simply go to flipnerd.com/Facebook to request your access today.